On the eve of Halloween, the village of Villanueva was wrapped in a peculiar atmosphere. The houses, with their windows lit by pumpkin lanterns, contrasted sharply with the dense fog rising from the enchanted forest. Nocturno, the black cat with shiny fur and emerald green eyes, watched everything from the safety of his window. He had always been curious, but that night a sense of unease enveloped him. Something was wrong. The fog seemed alive, as if it were breathing, and Nocturno couldn't shake the feeling that it concealed secrets waiting to be uncovered. He stepped away from the window, his mind swirling with questions. What's happening out there? Why did this fog suddenly appear? He pondered. With a flick of his tail, he decided he couldn't just stand there looking at the forest. He needed to discover the source of that strange fog. Meanwhile, in a small burrow beneath an ancient tree, Valente, a brave and fearless little mouse, was also worried. He looked at his family gathered together, all with expressions of apprehension. "This fog is affecting all of us," Valente said, his voice firm but tinged with concern. "I can't stay here while the enchanted forest is in danger. I need to go find Nocturno and see what's going on." With determination, he set out, his tiny feet making little noise on the leaf-covered ground. As he crossed the village, Valente felt that his courage was about to be tested. Upon reaching Nocturno's house, he hesitated for a moment, but then knocked on the door. "Valente!" exclaimed Nocturno as he opened the door. "Did you feel the fog too? I'm about to investigate." "Yes. I can't stop thinking about it. My family is worried, and I need to do something," Valente replied, his voice brimming with determination. "Then let's go together. I can't do this alone," Nocturno said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Just as the two friends were preparing to leave, a dreamy little mouse named Chispa appeared. With her golden fur and curious gaze, she was always dreaming of adventures. "Hi, friends. What are you up to?" she asked, animated. "We're going to investigate the fog in the forest. Would you like to join us?" Valente asked, smiling. "Oh, I would love to. I've always dreamed of finding a lost treasure that belonged to my family. Maybe the fog is connected to it," Chispa said, her eyes shining with the thought of a new adventure. "Then it's settled. Let's meet at the edge of the forest under the moonlight," suggested Nocturno, eager to begin the journey. The group said their goodbyes, each returning home to prepare. Nocturno, Valente, and Chispa were ready for the adventure, but there was one little mouse who still hesitated. Carmen, the cautious mouse, watched from a distance. She had always been the most careful among her friends, and the thought of venturing into the darkness of the forest terrified her. "What if something happens? What if the fog is dangerous?" Carmen murmured to herself, filled with doubts and fears. Valente, with his generous heart, noticed Carmen's hesitation and decided to approach her. "Carmen, you don't need to be afraid. We're in this together, and together we're stronger," he said, trying to encourage her. "But what if I can't face the dark?" Carmen replied, her voice trembling. "We'll be there to support you. You're braver than you think. Friendship is our light, and together we can face anything," Chispa affirmed with an encouraging smile. Carmen looked at her friends, feeling the strength of their support. With a deep breath, she finally agreed. "All right, I'll go. For you guys, I'll face my fear." With renewed determination, the group gathered under the moonlight, ready to uncover the mysteries hidden within the fog. At that moment, Nocturno felt that the adventure was just beginning, and with his friends by his side, nothing could stop them. The forest was shrouded in a thick and mysterious fog, and unease hung in the air. Valente, the brave little mouse, looked out the window of his small home, the moonlight reflecting in his determined eyes. He couldn't stop thinking about the fog that seemed to spread, engulfing everything around him. He knew he had to act, not just for himself, but for his family, who were becoming more frightened. "I can't wait any longer. I need to find Nocturno and discover what's going on," Valente murmured to himself as he grabbed his small backpack. Determined, he left his house and headed for Nocturno's. Meanwhile, Chispa, the dreamy little mouse, was in her nest, surrounded by memories of her family. She had always heard stories about a lost treasure belonging to her ancestors, a legacy that could help her community. However, the fog made her uneasy. What if the treasure is in the forest? What if I can't find it? She thought, her mind filled with doubts. But when Valente knocked on her door, she felt the call of adventure. Chispa! You need to come with me. The fog is getting worse, and I need your help, said Valente, urgency shining in his eyes. Chispa hesitated for a moment, but Valente's determination encouraged her. I'm with you, Valente. I've always wanted to find my family's lost treasure. Maybe this is our chance. Chispa replied, a shy smile beginning to bloom on her face. The two little mice, now united by a common goal, made their way to Nocturno's house. Along the way they found Carmen sitting on a log, looking anxiously at the forest. Valente and Chispa approached her, and Valente, noticing his friend's hesitation, decided to speak. Carmen, you don't have to stay here alone. The fog is affecting all of us. We're going to help Nocturno figure out what's going on. Are you coming with us? Valente asked, his voice full of encouragement. Carmen looked at her friends, her heart pounding in her chest. I don't know. What if the mist is dangerous? I'm scared of the dark and the forest. I'm not as brave as you guys, she confessed, lowering her head. But that's exactly why you should come. We need you, Carmen. Your caution can help us avoid dangers we might not even notice, Chispa said, trying to comfort her. And more importantly, together we are stronger. You're not alone. Chispa's words touched Carmen's heart. The friendship and support from the two little mice made her feel a bit stronger. Okay, I'll go. I promise I'll try to face my fear, Carmen said, determined, even though she still trembled a little. With the group now complete, they gathered under the moonlight, which illuminated the path ahead. Nocturno, who had been watching the mist from his window, awaited his friends eagerly. I'm glad you came. The mist seems to be connected to an ancient mystery in the forest. We need to uncover its origin and, if possible, restore peace, he explained, looking into each of their eyes. We're ready, Nocturno. Let's unravel this mystery together, Valente exclaimed, his courage radiating confidence. Yes, and who knows, maybe we'll even find my family's lost treasure along the way, added Chispa, his heart racing at the prospect of adventure. Now more determined, Carmen smiled at her friends. We're in this together. Let's face whatever lies ahead. And so, under the moonlight and with the thick mist surrounding them, the group set off toward the enchanted forest, ready to confront the enigmas and challenges that awaited them. As they crossed moonlit fields, nervous laughter and tales of bravery filled the air. The journey was just beginning, but the friendship and courage of each of them shone brighter than the mist enveloping them. As they entered the enchanted forest, Nocturno and his friends were immediately engulfed by the thick mist that hovered over the ground. The air was filled with a sweet, earthy fragrance, but there was something unsettling about the atmosphere. The moonlight filtered timidly through the tree canopies, creating a dance of shadows around them. Wow, what a magical place! Chispa exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with admiration. But it's also a bit scary, don't you think? Valente, walking ahead, stopped and turned back, his courage pulsing in his small heart. We can't let fear take over, Chispa. We're here to find out what's going on. We need to be brave, just like our name, he said, trying to infuse some spirit into his friends. Nocturno, observing the determination in their faces, nodded. Yes, whatever is causing this mist we must discover, but we need to stay alert. The forest holds many secrets. The mist seemed to come alive, wrapping around the four friends as they ventured deeper into the forest. Suddenly, an imposing silhouette appeared before them. It was a golden feathered owl with deep, wise eyes. It landed on a low branch, watching the group with curiosity. Who dares to enter this enchanted realm, where the mist hides more than it seems? The owl's voice echoed like a whispering wind among the trees. Valente, without hesitation, stepped forward. We are Nocturno, Valente, Chispa, and Carmen. We came to investigate the mist and help our village. The owl smiled faintly, its eyes shining with an intense light. Courage is a rare quality, but before you proceed, you must pass a test. The mist is a challenge that reveals the true essence of each being. To advance, you must solve my riddle. A riddle? Chispa murmured, looking anxious. What if we can't? Let's try, Carmen said, nervously clutching her little paws. The owl then recited, In the shadows of the forest, the secret lies concealed. Who seeks the courage, the light revealed. A treasure lost, that fear conceals. The truth is the path that the mist reveals. The group fell silent, processing the owl's words. The light revealed, maybe it's about not letting fear control us, Nocturno suggested, looking at his friends. Valente frowned, deep in thought. And the treasure? What does that mean? Chispa, with her dreamy nature, had an idea. Maybe the treasure is the courage within us. I've always dreamed of finding something valuable, but perhaps what I really need is to believe in myself. The owl nodded, encouraging them. Yes, each of you has a hidden treasure. You must look within and find the courage needed to uncover the truth. Valente, inspired by Chispa's words, closed his eyes and recalled stories his grandfather told about bravery and overcoming fears. I remember a legend about a little mouse who faced a fierce cat to save his family. The true treasure was the courage he found within himself. The owl looked at Valente with approval. You are on the right path, young mouse. Now what is the answer to the riddle? With a new spark of determination, Valente finally articulated, Courage is the treasure that frees us from fear. The owl smiled widely, its feathers gleaming in the moonlight. Very well, Valente. You have proven your courage and may pass. The mist will begin to dissipate, but remember, the true journey is only just beginning. With that, the mist around them began to clear, revealing a path that stretched deeper into the forest, illuminated by the moonlight. The group exchanged looks of relief and joy. We did it! That was amazing! Exclaimed Chispa, jumping for joy. We're ready for the next part of the adventure. Nocturno, with a satisfied smile, looked at his friends. Yes, together we are stronger. Let's move forward. With hearts full of courage and renewed hope, they ventured into the unknown, ready to face the challenges that the enchanted forest still had to offer. As they entered the enchanted forest, the atmosphere around the group changed with each step. The mist wrapped around everything like a soft, mysterious cloak, creating a magical yet unsettling environment. The tall ancient trees seemed to whisper secrets as the wind rustled through their branches. Nocturno, with his sleek black fur and bright eyes, led the way, his heart racing with excitement and nervousness. Look at this, shouted Valente, pointing at the ground covered in colorful leaves. It's like the forest is dressed for a party. Chispa, ever the dreamer, gazed around with wide eyes. I've always wanted to see the forest like this, full of life and mystery. Isn't it incredible? Carmen, however, remained more reserved, watching the mist with a mix of admiration and fear. It's beautiful, but what if something grabs us from the shadows? The concern in her voice was evident, and she hesitated, feeling the weight of the darkness around them. Don't worry, Carmen, Valente said with an encouraging smile. We're together, and nothing can stop us. He moved closer to her, trying to convey confidence. Let's stick together. Friendship is our greatest strength. Noticing Carmen's hesitation, Nocturno suggested, how about we take a break and build a raft to cross the river ahead? That way, while we work together, we can distract ourselves and strengthen our bond. Carmen nodded slowly, feeling excited about the idea of collaborating. You're right, Nocturno. Working as a team always makes things feel less scary. So they headed to the enchanted river that wound through the forest, its waters shimmering in shades of blue and green under the moonlight. The group gathered at the riverbank, observing the current. How are we going to do this? Chispa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and apprehension. We can use branches and large leaves, suggested Valente, already starting to look for materials. If we all help, it will be easier. I'll go find some large leaves, Chispa exclaimed, stepping away a bit, excited to contribute. Meanwhile, Nocturno and Valente began gathering branches. The atmosphere of teamwork began to dissipate some of the tension hanging in the air. Carmen, on the other hand, watched their movements, but her gaze was distant. Seeing her friends having fun sparked a flicker of courage within her. I can help too, she said, determined, as she approached the group. I'll gather some stones to stabilize the raft. That's great, Carmen, Valente praised her. Together we're stronger, and you're an essential part of this. He smiled, and Carmen's eyes sparkled with a mix of relief and determination. After a while, they managed to build a simple raft, but strong enough to cross the river. It's ready! Let's test it, declared Nocturno, jumping nimbly onto the raft. Carmen hesitated for a moment, watching the water glimmering under the moonlight. What if I fall? What if I can't swim? Her voice trembled slightly. Carmen, you're braver than you think, and we're all here. If you fall, we'll be ready to help you. Chispa encouraged her. Besides, the water looks pretty calm. You'll do great. I want to try, Carmen finally said, feeling the support of her friends. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the raft, her heart racing. Let's go! As they crossed the river, the gentle current and the nervous laughter of the group made the crossing lighter. Carmen looked at her friends and felt that, despite her fear, she was doing something important. When they were almost halfway across, the raft began to sway, and in a moment of panic, Carmen lost her balance and fell into the water. No, Carmen! Valente and Chispa shouted in unison, but Nocturno, who was closest, quickly moved toward the bank. Carmen, grab onto anything, he urged, extending a paw. Carmen felt the cold water around her, but instead of letting fear take over, she remembered her friend's words. With a surge of determination, she swam toward the edge and grabbed a floating branch. With a decisive movement, she climbed back onto the raft, breathless but victorious. I did it! I did it! She shouted, and the joy in her voice was contagious. Valente and Chispa cheered, and even Nocturno smiled with pride. You faced your fear, Carmen. That was amazing, Valente said, admiring her courage. Carmen beamed, her eyes sparkling with happiness. Thank you, friends. I couldn't have done it without you. And as they continued their crossing, the bond between them grew stronger, united by the courage and friendship that had blossomed on that magical night. The four friends cautiously advanced through the forest, following a path that seemed to narrow with the intensity of the mist. The leaves crunched under their paws and feet, and the atmosphere carried a mix of excitement and apprehension. As they walked, Chispa looked around, admiring the mystical beauty surrounding them. Look, friends, those moss-covered trunks seem to have a life of their own, she exclaimed, enchanted. Valente, still anxious from earlier, replied, Yes, but we can't get distracted. We need to find the solution to this mist. What do you think it means? Nocturno, who always had an investigative spirit, paused to observe the trees that seemed to whisper secrets. I believe we're getting closer to something important. I feel it in the air, she declared, a glint of determination in her eyes. Suddenly, the group came upon the entrance of a dark cave, almost camouflaged among the shadows of the forest. The walls of the cave were covered in ancient inscriptions, and a sense of mystery hung in the air. Is this where we might find the lost treasure that Chispa mentioned? Carmen asked, hesitantly gazing into the darkness. It seems so, Chispa replied, a mix of hope and anxiety in her voice. The legend said the treasure was hidden in a secret place, and maybe this cave is our destination. Feeling the weight of the moment, Valente stepped forward. Let's go in. We need to be brave. Together we can face any challenge. Carmen took a deep breath, looking at the darkness that stretched out before them. What if there's something scary inside? I don't know if I can handle that, she murmured, her ears drooping in concern. Valente turned to her, his gaze gentle and encouraging. Carmen, you're not alone. We're all in this together. If we feel scared, we can support each other. Nocturno chimed in with a smile. Yes, And who knows what we might discover. Every step we take could bring us closer to the truth. With a gesture of confidence, Valente moved toward the cave, and the others followed, forming a line of courage and friendship. Inside the cave, the light was almost non-existent, but the inscriptions on the walls began to glow softly, illuminating the path as they ventured deeper. "Look at these markings. They seem to tell a story," Chispa said, fascinated by the carved figures. "Let's see if we can understand what they say." As they examined the inscriptions, the tension in the air grew, but Valente remained resolute. "We need to figure out what this means. It could be the key to understanding the mist and finding the treasure." Nocturno approached a section of the mural that depicted a dense fog, similar to what they had encountered in the village. "It seems this mist isn't just a natural phenomenon. There's something more behind it," he pondered. Carmen, feeling more confident now, pointed to a part of the mural that featured a glowing crystal. "This must be important. Look, the crystal seems to be connected to the mist. We need to figure out how to get there." The group gathered around the mural, each trying to decipher the messages. "Wait a minute. If this mist is a test of courage, maybe we need to prove our bravery to move forward," Valente suggested, recalling the challenge of the owl. "We need to show that we are worthy of discovering what is hidden." Chispa, now excited, looked at her friends. "Then let's go together. No matter what lies ahead, we'll face it as a team." Carmen smiled, feeling the strength of the friendship that bound them. "Yes, together we are stronger." With this renewed determination, the group decided they needed to find the next step. They exchanged glances, ready to discover what else the cave had to offer. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the atmosphere around them began to change. The air grew heavy with humidity, and a coldness that seemed to penetrate their bones. The mist, once merely a presence outside, was now a tangible current, wrapping around them in a chilling embrace. Nocturno, at the front, looked back and saw the faces of his friends illuminated by the faint light filtering through the cave walls. They looked worried, but also determined. "We need to hurry," Nocturno said, his voice echoing softly against the rocky walls. "The mist is intensifying. I don't know what will happen if we don't find the solution quickly." Valente, with his newly discovered courage, nodded. "Yes, we must find whatever is causing this. What do you remember about the legend, Nocturno?" The black cat closed his eyes for a moment, trying to recall the stories he'd heard from his grandmother. "There was a legend about a magical crystal hidden somewhere in the enchanted forest. They say it has the power to dispel the mist and restore harmony between the forest beings and the villagers." "A crystal?" Chispa asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Do you think it still exists?" "If the legend is true, then it must be somewhere around here," Nocturno replied. "We need to find more clues." Carmen, who had been lagging behind, examined the inscriptions on the cave walls. "Look at this," she called, pointing to a drawing that resembled a map. "Maybe this will tell us where to search." The others gathered around, and Valente studied the drawing closely. "This looks like a sacred place," he said, indicating a mark that stood out on the map. "We can start here." "But how will we get there?" Chispa asked, a hint of anxiety in her voice. "Nocturno, can you help us understand what these inscriptions mean?" Valente suggested, looking at the cat. "Now, of course, let's see if we can decipher them together," Nocturno replied as he approached the wall. "These inscriptions seem to guide us to the heart of the forest. I believe the crystal is on an altar." Carmen, still hesitant, looked at her friends and took a deep breath. "What if we encounter more dangers along the way? The mist is making everything so uncertain." "Carmen," Valente said, placing a paw on her shoulder. "We're in this together. You're not alone. And if something happens, we'll face it together. And remember," Chispa added with an encouraging smile, "you've already faced your fear of the dark by crossing the river. You're stronger than you think." With her friend's supportive words, Carmen felt her fear begin to fade. "All right, I'll give it my best shot," she said, determined. "Let's find out where that crystal is." The group followed the path indicated by the map, their voices softly echoing off the cave walls. The mist continued to thicken, but they were determined not to let fear take hold. With each step, the urgency grew. Finally, after a few minutes of walking, they arrived at a spacious room where an altar adorned with magical flowers stood proudly in the center. The glow of the flowers illuminated the mist, creating a spectacle of colors that danced around them. "This is it!" exclaimed Nocturno, his eyes sparkling with discovery. "The crystal must be on this altar." Valente, feeling courage pulse in his heart, stepped forward. "Let's find it before it's too late." As they approached the altar, the air seemed to vibrate with magical energy. Nocturno extended his paw and touched the surface of the altar, feeling a deep connection with the forest and its creatures. "We're close. I can feel it. Let's find this crystal and dispel the mist once and for all." The friends united, ready to face whatever came next, determined to restore peace between the village and the forest. The light emanating from the magical flowers illuminated their faces, while the mist danced around them, as if cheering them on. The group of friends advanced through the enchanted forest, feeling the thick mist surrounding them. The atmosphere was charged with mystery, and a growing unease enveloped them. As they walked, a shadow moved quickly between the trees, causing the little mice's hearts to race. Nocturno, with his ears perked up, stopped and whispered, "I think we're not alone. Something is watching us." Carmen, already a bit nervous, glanced around with an anxious look. I don't like this. What could it be?" She moved closer to Valente, seeking comfort in her brave friend's presence. Valente took a deep breath and, trying to show confidence, replied, "Don't worry, Carmen, we're a team. Together we can face anything." The determination in his voice made Carmen feel a little safer, but the mist continued to move, as if it were alive. Suddenly a group of forest creatures appeared before them, emerging from the mist. They were magical beings with shimmering fur and eyes that sparkled like stars. The leader, a massive and imposing stag, lifted his head and looked at the group with an air of suspicion. "Who are you, and what do you seek in our forest?" His voice was deep and echoed among the trees. Nocturno stepped forward, feeling the weight of responsibility to protect his friends. "We are Nocturno, Valente, Chispa, and Carmen. We've come in search of a crystal that can dispel this mist. We want to restore peace between the village and the forest. The mist is causing fear and confusion for everyone." The creatures exchanged glances, and the stag continued to observe the group. "Many have ventured here before, but few have succeeded. What guarantees us that you are not just another threat?" Valente felt it was time to act. With the courage now coursing through his veins, he stepped forward and spoke. "We are not a threat. We're here to help. The mist affects not just the forest, but also our village. Families on both sides are suffering. If we can obtain the crystal, we can unite our communities and bring back the harmony that once existed." The creatures looked at each other again, and the stag seemed to ponder Valente's words. Courage is a rare quality, and it is exactly what we need at this moment. However, it will not be easy. The path to the crystal is dangerous and many challenges lie ahead. "Are you willing to face whatever comes?" "Yes," Valente exclaimed, his heart pounding with determination. "We're ready. We will do whatever it takes to restore peace." Carmen, still a bit hesitant, felt inspired by Valente's fervor. I also want to help. If this means we can aid our families in the forest, then I'm with you." Chispa, with shining eyes filled with excitement, joined in the declaration of courage. "And I want to find my family's lost treasure. Maybe the crystal is the key to that." The stag observed the sparkle in the little friend's eyes, and with a slight nod said, "Your determination is admirable. Very well. If this is what you desire, we will help you. But remember, true courage comes from the heart. The road may be treacherous and you will need each other to overcome the challenges ahead." With a new ally by their side, the group felt strengthened. The forest creatures, touched by the courage and determination of Valente and his friends, decided to guide them to where the crystal was hidden. As they moved forward, the mist seemed to dissipate a little, as if the forest was beginning to believe that peace could be restored. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and hope. Nocturno, Valente, Chispa, and Carmen, now accompanied by the stag and his creatures, were ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, united by a greater purpose. The group finally found the crystal on an altar covered in magical flowers. The petals radiated vibrant colors, reflecting the soft light of the full moon that illuminated the clearing. Nocturno, with his black fur shining under the silvery light, approached cautiously. The atmosphere was thick with an intense feeling, as if the forest itself were watching their every move. "Look at this!" exclaimed Valente, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "These flowers, they seem to vibrate." Carmen, still a bit hesitant, looked at the flowers and then at the crystal resting delicately on the altar. "Do you really think it can dispel the fog?" Her voice trembled, reflecting a mix of hope and fear. "We have to try," Nocturno replied, determined. "If the legend is true, this crystal is the key to restoring harmony between the village and the forest. We need it." Chispa, who was closer to the altar, reached a paw toward the crystal but hesitated. What if it doesn't work? What if things get worse? The fear of another failure consumed her. "Chispa, we need to have faith," Valente encouraged her. "Together, we face the fog. Together, we can do this too." With a deep sigh, Chispa finally nodded, her eyes filling with determination. "You're right. Let's do this for ourselves and for everyone in the village." Nocturno, sensing that this was the decisive moment, approached the altar. The crystal seemed to pulse with its own energy, as if it were alive. He extended his paw and touched the cold, shining surface. A wave of energy coursed through his body, and he felt a deep connection with the forest around him, as if every tree, every leaf, was whispering ancient secrets. "What do you feel, Nocturno?" Carmen asked, her eyes fixed on the black cat. "I feel the life of the forest," he replied, his voice low and reverent. "It's calling to us, asking us to protect and respect it. This crystal, it's more than just an object. It's a symbol of the connection we have with everything around us." At that instant, as he lifted the crystal, a wave of light erupted from the altar, flooding the clearing with a radiant glow. The flowers surrounding the altar began to dance to the rhythm of the light, their colors intensifying in a symphony of hues that illuminated the environment. The fog that had previously shrouded the forest began to dissipate, as if being swept away by a magical breeze. "Look!" Chispa shouted, her eyes wide with astonishment. "The fog is going away!" "Nocturno, you did it!" Valente exclaimed, jumping for joy. "The light is guiding us!" As the fog receded, a lit path began to form before them, revealing the beauty of the enchanted forest in all its glory. Majestic trees, brightly colored flowers, and forest creatures started to appear, all drawn to the light of the crystal. "Let's go," Nocturno said, his voice filled with excitement and hope. "We're almost there." They followed the illuminated path, their hearts pounding with anticipation. With each step, the forest seemed to rejoice in their presence, as if nature itself was celebrating the restoration of the connection between the village and the enchanted forest. "It's incredible," Carmen whispered, looking around in admiration. "I never realized how beautiful the forest really is. And all of this is because of the courage we found together," Valente said, giving a warm smile to his friends. "We're making history." The light from the crystal guided them, and as they moved forward with steady steps, the group knew that regardless of what lay ahead, they would face it together, as true friends. Now, surrounded by the radiant light emanating from the crystal, Nocturno and his friends gazed at the magical clearing before them. The fog, which had once obscured the forest and spread uncertainty, had vanished, revealing an enchanting panorama. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers beginning to bloom in spring. "Look, it's like the forest is waking up," Valente said, his eyes sparkling with admiration. "I've never seen anything so beautiful." Carmen, still a bit hesitant but now more confident, smiled. "Yes, and it seems like every leaf and every flower has a story to tell. The fog was keeping us apart from all of this. Chispa, her ears perked up, looked around and exclaimed, "I think the fog wasn't just an obstacle. It was a symbol of what was happening between the village and the forest. We were so distant from each other." Nocturno, observing his friends, realized the truth in their words. Yes, the fog was a reflection of how we felt. Fear, distrust. But now, by finding the crystal and breaking this spell, we can do better. As they spoke, the villagers began to approach, drawn by the light and joy emanating from the clearing. The faces that had once been worried and tense now showed expressions of curiosity and hope. One of the villagers, an old man named Don Miguel, was the first to step forward. "You found what we were searching for, didn't you?" he said, his voice filled with emotion. "The fog divided us, but now I see there's a new chance for all of us." "Yes, Don Miguel," Nocturno replied, moving closer. "We discovered that the fog was a symbol of separation, but now, with the crystal, we can unite both communities." Valente, ever brave, added, "We need to take care of each other, both the village and the forest. This crystal represents our unity and our commitment to protect what we have together." Valente's words resonated among the villagers, and a murmur of agreement swept through the group. Carmen, gathering her courage, turned to the villagers. "The forest is full of life and beauty. If we take care of it, it will take care of us." Chispa, ever the dreamer, added, "And if we unite our stories, we can create a better future. Let's support each other and learn from one another." Don Miguel nodded, a wide smile on his face. "You young ones are right. We need a new perspective. Let's celebrate this union, and together make a pact of friendship between the village and the forest." With that, the clearing lit up with the contagious energy of hope. The villagers began to gather, and joy spread like a wave. The village children, full of curiosity, rushed closer to the group of friends, admiring the crystal that still gleamed in their hands. "Look, Mommy, what is this?" a little girl asked, pointing at the crystal. "It's a symbol of unity, dear," her mother replied, her eyes shining. "It reminds us that together we are stronger." And so, amidst laughter and hugs, the villagers and the forest beings began to celebrate. Music and dancing echoed through the clearing as everyone formed a large circle, sharing stories and laughter. Nocturno, Valente, Carmen and Chispa exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting a deep sense of accomplishment. They had overcome fears, unraveled mysteries, and most importantly, opened a path to a future where friendship and understanding prevailed. "This is just the first of many celebrations we will have," Nocturno declared, a satisfied smile on his face. "And it all started with the courage of a few." Valente raised his voice, excited. "And with everyone's help, we can make a difference." Under the starry sky, the clearing buzzed with life, and the mist, now just a distant memory, became a symbol of transformation and hope. The celebration in the clearing was filled with joy and laughter. Nocturno, Valente, Chispa, and Carmen watched, enchanted by the dances and smiles of the villagers and forest creatures. The light from the crystal, now shining brightly, illuminated the happy faces, reflecting the unity that had been restored. Valente, with his heart pounding with emotion, decided it was time to share something special. "Chispa," he called, his voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. The dreamy little mouse turned, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I have something to tell you. Whenever you talked about your family's lost treasure, I thought it was hidden somewhere physical. But during this journey, I realized that the true treasure you sought was inside you all along." Chispa frowned, confused. "Inside me? What do you mean, Valente?" "You've always been brave, even when you didn't believe in yourself. The treasure you were looking for was the courage to be who you really are. Now, you've shown that you can face your fears and conquer the darkness. That's something much more valuable than any physical object." Valente smiled, admiration evident in his gaze. Chispa's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Do you really think so? I always thought I needed something grand to feel special. You are special, Chispa. And we all recognize that now, Carmen chimed in, placing a paw on her friend's shoulder. Your courage inspired all of us to face our own fears. As the group embraced, a murmur spread through the crowd. The wise owl, who had been watching everything from her perch in a tree, slowly descended to the center of the clearing. Her imposing presence silenced the crowd. Dear friends, I feel this is the right moment to reveal a secret that has been hidden for a long time. All eyes turned to the owl. I am the guardian of the enchanted forest, and I am also Chispa's ancestor. For generations, my family has protected this forest and its inhabitants, as well as the village. The mist you faced was not just a test of courage, but a call for unity between our worlds. And Chispa, you have always been destined to be a bridge between them. Chispa, now fully attentive, asked, "But why didn't you reveal yourself before?" The owl looked at the little mouse with tenderness. "I watched you grow, Chispa. I needed to ensure that you became strong enough to understand the true importance of courage. And now, alongside your friends, you have proven that to all of us." The clearing erupted in applause and cheers of joy. The villagers and forest creatures were moved by the revelation. "Long live courage! Long live unity!" shouted one of the villagers, and the crowd echoed the cry in a vibrant chorus. "Nocturno Valente, Carmen and Chispa," the owl continued. "You have shown that true strength comes from friendship and love. From this day forward, the forest and the village will be more united than ever. Do you promise to care for one another, respecting nature and the magic that connects us?" "We promise," everyone shouted in unison with fervor. The owl, with a glimmer in her eyes, turned to Chispa. "And you, my dear, are now the guardian of the legacy of courage. Whenever you feel fear, remember that true bravery lies in your heart. Never doubt yourself." Chispa smiled, feeling a wave of determination. "Thank you, owl. I will never forget what I've learned." With that, the celebration continued, honoring not just the overcoming of challenges, but also the unity of two communities that, together, could face any storm. The mist, now cleared, symbolized no longer separation, but the freedom and hope of a bright future for all. The journey doesn't end here. A new story awaits us. In the magical forest of Andalusia, where sunlight filtered through the green leaves and birds sang cheerful melodies, Lucio the fox explored every nook with his characteristic curiosity. His bright red fur shimmered in the light as his agile paws carried him along winding trails. He admired the beauty of nature around him, absorbing the vibrant life that pulsed in that enchanted place. The flowers danced gently in the breeze, and the trees stood tall and majestic, as if they wanted to share ancient secrets with him. Lucio paused for a moment, looking up at the blue sky, and thought, "Today is a perfect day for a new adventure." With a sparkle in his eyes, he followed his instincts, venturing further into the forest. As he walked, he heard the murmur of a nearby river. Curiosity led him to the shimmering bank of a river whose waters reflected the sky like a mirror. He approached, admiring the gentle movement of the current, but soon noticed something that caught his attention. At the river's edge, a turtle was standing still, hesitating, with her head down and eyes filled with worry. "Hey, what's wrong, friend?" Lucio asked, approaching carefully. The turtle, known as Granny Turtle, slowly lifted her head, her eyes expressing a mix of fear and insecurity. "Oh, hello, Fox," she replied, her voice trembling. I need to cross the river, but I can't. The waters are too strong, and I'm afraid I'll drown." Lucio, always clever and full of ideas, felt a surge of determination to help. "But you're a turtle. You can swim, can't you? I can help you cross." Granny Turtle shook her head, more sorrowful than before. "Yes, I know how to swim, but the current is too strong. I'm not as fast as you, Lucio. What if I get swept away?" "I understand, but sometimes we have to face our fears. How about we plan the crossing together? We can think of something that will make you feel safer," suggested Lucio, trying to encourage her. The turtle hesitated, but the determination in the fox's eyes inspired her. "You're right, Lucio. Maybe if I think of a plan, I can do it. But what if I get too scared halfway across?" "If you feel afraid, I'll be right by your side," Lucio replied confidently. "Together, we are stronger." Granny Turtle smiled shyly, feeling a bit braver. "You're a very kind friend, Lucio. Thank you for comforting me." As the sun shone brightly upon them, Lucio and Granny Turtle began discussing strategies to cross the river. The fox, with his cleverness, suggested they find a log to serve as a bridge. "If we can find a log, you can cross safely," he said, looking around. While they talked, Granny Turtle began sharing stories from her youth when she had helped other animals in trouble. "In my younger days, I helped a bird that had fallen from its nest. With patience and care, I managed to take it back. It was so happy." Lucio listened intently, fascinated by Granny Turtle's stories. "You're truly brave, you know. I learned so much from you." The turtle smiled, feeling appreciated. "Our experiences teach us valuable lessons, Lucio, and now it's your turn to teach me how to be brave in the face of fear." Both were immersed in their conversation, and for a moment, Granny Turtle forgot her fear of the river. However, when Lucio glanced at the water, he noticed a group of mischievous birds watching them with disdain. The tension in the air rose, and Lucio realized that his cleverness would be needed once again. Lucio looked at Granny Turtle, who still stood hesitantly at the riverbank. The sunlight reflected off the shimmering waters, but for her, the brightness seemed only to amplify her fear. The fox, with his usual cleverness, knew he needed to find a way to encourage her. "Abuela, why don't we cross together? We can plan the crossing so you won't be alone," Lucio suggested, his gaze filled with determination. Granny Turtle took a deep breath, trying to find the courage within her. I don't know, Lucio. The waters are so deep and the current so strong. What would happen if I slip?" "You won't slip," Lucio responded, moving a little closer. "I'll be right by your side the whole time. Let's think of a strategy. Let's help each other. How about we come up with a plan?" The enthusiasm in the fox's voice began to have an effect, and Granny Turtle felt a little more at ease. She nodded slowly, still uncertain, but willing to listen. "All right, let's make a plan," she said, her eyes lighting up slightly. "But you have to promise me that you won't leave me alone." "I promise!" Lucio exclaimed, wagging his tail with joy. "Now, how do you remember crossing this river when you were younger?" The turtle smiled as she recalled her memories. "Oh yes. In my youth, I used to help other animals cross dangerous places. Once I helped a young rabbit who was terrified of the height of a bridge. I encouraged him, told stories about courage, and he managed to cross." Lucio's eyes sparkled with interest. "See, you've helped others before. That means you have courage inside you. We can use that to cross the river. Let's think about how we can keep safe." Granny Turtle, now a bit more confident, began to outline a plan. "We can look for large stones to use as support, and you can help me move safely while we cross, right?" "Exactly," Lucio replied enthusiastically. "And if we encounter any strong currents, we can hold onto the stones until it passes. Together we'll be stronger." As they chatted, Granny Turtle began to share more stories from her youth. "Once upon a time there was an old wolf trapped in a snare. He was so hurt and scared, but I didn't hesitate. I used all my strength to help him, even though I was small. Not only did I manage to free him, but he became my friend and taught me a lot about life," she recounted, her voice now stronger. Lucio listened intently, amazed by the turtle's bravery. "You're truly incredible, Abuela. Your courage inspires everyone around you. I want to be as brave as you." "Oh, my young friend, courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it," Granny Turtle said, her eyes sparkling. "I believe that if we unite, we can cross this river and face any challenge that comes our way." The fox was becoming more excited and hopeful. "Are we ready then, Abuela? Let's cross together." "Yes, let's," the turtle replied, a smile spreading across her face. Together, they prepared to face the river. Lucio felt that the friendship forming between them was one of the greatest treasures they could find, and even though the crossing would be challenging, they knew that together they could overcome any obstacle. As Lucio and Granny Turtle got ready for the crossing, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. The river sparkled under the sunlight, but it wasn't just the beauty of nature that caught Lucio's attention. A group of mischievous birds perched on a nearby branch watched them with knowing looks. The colorful birds, with their sharp beaks, seemed to be plotting something. Lucio, with his keen instincts, sensed that the situation could become complicated. "Look at those birds," he murmured to Granny Turtle, who was staring intently at the water. "They don't seem friendly." "I don't like the way they're looking at us," Granny Turtle replied, her voice trembling slightly. "What should we do, Lucio?" Hearing the fear in the turtle's voice, Lucio decided he needed to be clever, as he always was. "Leave it to me, Abuela. I'll distract them. You just focus on crossing the river when it's your turn." "But what if they decide to attack us?" Granny Turtle asked, gripping her shell with her front paws. "Trust me, I have a plan," Lucio assured her, a mischievous grin forming on his face. With a swift movement, he began to approach the birds, who were now whispering to one another, glancing at the duo. "Hey, you feathered peacocks! What are you doing just sitting there? Why don't you come over and show us how fast you really are?" Lucio shouted, taunting the birds. The birds, taken by surprise, exchanged suspicious glances. One of them, a robust bird with a long beak, responded with a disdainful smile. "Who are you, fox, to challenge us? We are the fastest in the forest." "Oh, really? Then why are you just sitting here instead of flying?" Lucio continued, using his charm and cleverness to keep their attention. "I bet you can't catch my friend Granny Turtle, who is the true champion of crossing rivers." Hearing this, Granny Turtle turned to Lucio, a mix of surprise and worry in her eyes. She wasn't used to receiving compliments, and the idea of being called a champion made her feel a bit flattered, yet still nervous. "Lucio, I'm just a turtle," she whispered, unsure whether to feel excited or scared. The birds, now offended and motivated, began to stir. "Let's see who's faster," shouted the robust bird, flapping its wings and taking to the sky. "Great, then let's go. Get ready to lose," Lucio yelled, making a dramatic gesture with his paw as the birds soared into the sky, trying to show off their speed. The distraction worked. Granny Turtle, seeing her opportunity, moved closer to the riverbank. "Lucio, I don't know if I can cross alone." "You can do it, Abuela. Remember your stories. You've helped many animals before. Now it's your turn to be the hero." Lucio encouraged her, his gaze firm and supportive. As the birds made a turn and prepared to come back, Granny Turtle took a deep breath. Lucio's voice motivated her more than anything else. "Okay, I'll try," she declared, resolute. However, when the turtle began to move, one of the birds, realizing they were about to be outsmarted, swooped down to intimidate them. "Hey, turtle, do you really think you can cross this river? You're just exposing yourself to danger." Lucio, noticing what was happening, quickly turned to the birds. "Why don't you try being a little more polite? That's not how you treat a lady like Granny Turtle." He positioned himself between the birds and Abuela, determined to protect her. Granny Turtle, surprised by Lucio's bravery, felt a wave of courage swell within her. "If they can fly, I can swim," she exclaimed, and with that, she launched herself into the river's waters. The current was strong, but the turtle's determination was even stronger. Lucio, watching her swim, shouted, "You're doing great, Abuela! Keep it up!" The birds, frustrated, tried to divert their attention, but what they didn't realize was how much Lucio's presence had empowered Granny Turtle. With each stroke, she felt more confident, more alive, and as she looked toward the riverbank, where her friend encouraged her, she knew she wasn't alone. "I'm coming!" Granny Turtle shouted, her voice filled with determination. And so, with Lucio's bravery and Abuela's renewed courage, they united in the crossing, challenging not only the current, but also the birds who didn't believe in the strength of friendship and the courage that blossomed within each of them. The crossing of Lucio and Granny Turtle was about to be put to the test. As soon as they started to navigate the calm waters of the river, a sudden storm formed on the horizon. Dark clouds gathered, and the winds began to blow fiercely, making the trees sway and the river water churn in restless waves. Lucio, with his bright eyes and attentive ears, immediately sensed the change in the weather. "Abuela, we need to hurry across," he exclaimed, looking at the turtle who, with her pale face, watched the approaching clouds. Granny Turtle, her voice trembling, replied, "Oh, Lucio, I don't know if I can cross now. I'm so afraid of the water when it gets rough like this." Fear paralyzed her, and she hesitated to take another step. "Calm down, Abuela," Lucio said, trying to convey confidence. "Remember your stories about facing challenges? You've always told me that in tough times it's important to believe in yourself." He moved closer to her, placing a paw on her shell. "We're in this together. Let's draw on what you've learned over all these years." She looked at Lucio, her eyes filled with apprehension, but he had a determination that inspired her. "You're right, dear Lucio. But how can we get through this storm? The wind is so strong, and the water seems fierce." "I'll think of something," Lucio replied, scanning the area. He spotted a large rock by the riverbank. "Let's take shelter there until the storm passes. After that, we can continue our crossing." "Do you really think that will work?" Granny Turtle asked, a thread of hope emerging in her voice. "Of course. Come on, Abuela. I'll help you," Lucio said, guiding her gently. Amid the howling wind, they ran toward the rock, whose sides were broad and protective. Once they reached it, Lucio positioned himself to shield Granny from any stronger gusts. As they sheltered, the rain began to fall, initially as a gentle murmur, but soon turning into a torrential downpour. Water streamed down the rock, creating small rivulets that rushed toward the river. Granny Turtle shrank back, feeling the cold and dampness. "This is just a storm, Abuela," Lucio said, trying to soothe her. "Remember how you helped that deer find its way in the fog? You can do this." She smiled faintly, recalling the adventures of her youth. "Yes, I remember. I always said that fog is only scary if you don't know where you're going." "Exactly!" Lucio exclaimed, wagging his tail. "And here we are together. If this storm teaches us anything, it's that we must trust each other." They fell silent for a moment, listening to the sound of the rain and the force of the wind. The storm felt endless, but Lucio's presence brought unexpected comfort to Granny Turtle. "Thank you, Lucio. You are a valuable friend," she said, looking at him with gratitude. "Friendship is what makes us strong, Abuela. Together we can face any storm," Lucio replied, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. As the storm began to subside, the wind grew gentler, and the rain transitioned from torrential to a light drizzle. "Look!" Lucio pointed to the clearing that was forming in the sky. "The clouds are dissipating. Let's wait a little longer and then we can go back to crossing." "Yes, you are right," Granny Turtle agreed, her confidence growing. "Together we are stronger. Thank you for being here, Lucio. Your courage encourages me to be brave too." And so, under the shelter of the rock, and with the storm finally moving away, Lucio and Granny Turtle waited patiently, knowing that regardless of the challenges ahead, they would face everything together. Lucio and Granny Turtle continued on their journey, tackling the adversities that arose along the way. After the storm, the air was fresh and fragrant with the moisture from the leaves, and sunlight began to break through the dark clouds, creating a magical environment around them. As they walked, Lucio, ever observant, noticed movement to his right. Curious, he approached and spotted a rabbit caught in a thorny bush, struggling to free itself. "Hello?" Lucio called out softly, trying to calm the rabbit. "What happened? Do you need help?" The rabbit, with wide eyes filled with fear, looked at Lucio and shook his head, panting. "I'm stuck. I can't get out. These thorns are holding me back." Granny Turtle, who had moved closer, watched the situation with compassion. She knew how important it was to help a friend in trouble. "Calm down, young rabbit," she said, her voice soothing and encouraging. "Don't worry, we're here to help." Lucio, always clever, began to think about how they could free him. "Abuela, maybe if we pull the bush from one side and he pushes from the other, we can get him free." "What do you think?" Lucio suggested, encouraging the turtle to get more involved. "That's a good idea, Lucio. Granny Turtle agreed as she positioned herself behind the rabbit. "Let's do this together. You count to 3, and on 3 we pull." The rabbit looked at them, feeling a mix of fear and hope. "Okay, I'll try," said the rabbit, taking a deep breath. Lucio, with his enthusiastic way, started counting 1, 2, 3. With a combined effort, Lucio pulled the bush to one side, while Granny Turtle gently pushed the rabbit. The rabbit strained, and with one final push, he finally managed to break free from the clutches of the bush. "I did it," the rabbit exclaimed, hopping away from the trap. Thank you. I thought I'd never get out." "I'm glad you're safe," Lucio said, smiling. "What were you doing stuck here?" The rabbit, now calmer, began to explain. "I was trying to pick some leaves for my lunch, but I didn't realize I was so close to that thicket. I'm not very good at foraging without getting tangled up." Granny Turtle chuckled softly, recalling her own experiences in her youth. "We've all been in tough situations, young rabbit. The important thing is that you've learned something from this experience. And now you're not alone anymore," she said, a glimmer of wisdom in her eyes. The rabbit looked at Lucio and Granny Turtle, feeling grateful for the help he had received. "Can I join you in crossing?" he asked with a hopeful smile. "I would love to have the company of friends." "Of course. The more the merrier," replied Lucio, excited. "We're heading to the other side of the river. Together we are stronger." Granny Turtle nodded, satisfied with the new addition to their group. "Welcome aboard, friend," she said. "Together we can face any challenge that comes our way." The rabbit, now filled with energy and enthusiasm, hopped alongside Lucio and Granny Turtle. They continued their journey, chatting and laughing as the sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating their path. "You know, I never thought crossing the river would be so full of adventures," the rabbit remarked, glancing at the shimmering waters. "I'm so happy to have found you guys." Lucio, with a mischievous sparkle in his eyes, replied, "And we're happy to have you with us. Friends always help each other, right?" Granny Turtle smiled, pleased with the spirit of unity that was forming among them. What had begun as a simple act of help had now transformed into a new friendship, filled with adventures and triumphs. They pressed on, ready to face whatever the forest had in store for them. As Lucio and Granny Turtle continued their crossing, a new challenge appeared before them. A narrow bridge, made of intertwined logs, stretched over a deep ravine. In the middle of the bridge stood a small squirrel, paralyzed, his eyes wide and his fur disheveled. He trembled, unable to move forward or backward. Lucio, always attentive, noticed the squirrel's distress and approached. "Hello, friend," Lucio called out, trying to sound encouraging. "What's wrong?" The squirrel looked at Lucio, his voice trembling and barely audible. I can't cross. I'm afraid of falling," he replied, glancing down at the abyss below. Granny Turtle, with her wisdom gained over the years, recognized the situation and moved closer, careful not to frighten the little animal further. "Don't worry, dear squirrel," she said, her voice soft and reassuring. "We've all felt afraid at some point. The important thing is not to let fear stop us from moving forward." The squirrel gazed at Granny Turtle, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and hesitation. "But what if I fall?" he questioned, shaking his head negatively. "The bridge is so narrow." Lucio, realizing that his words weren't enough, decided to use a bit of his cleverness to help the squirrel feel more secure. "Look at me, little friend," he said, hopping a bit to the side of the bridge. "See how I move? One step at a time, no need to rush. You can do this." The squirrel watched Lucio with interest but still hesitated. It was then that Granny Turtle decided to share one of the many stories she held dear. "When I was young, I faced a similar situation," she began, her voice firm yet gentle. "Once, I was standing in front of a very wide river, and I had to cross it. Fear almost paralyzed my feet. But then, I remembered my friends who told stories about courage. One of them said that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it." Granny Turtle's words began to resonate with the squirrel. He looked at her, and the expression on his face began to change. "Did you really face that?" the squirrel asked, a bit more confident now. And did you manage to cross? Yes, I did, Granny Turtle replied, smiling. One step at a time, I made it to the other side, and when I looked back I realized that the fear was never as big as my determination. The squirrel took a deep breath, looking at the bridge, and then at his two encouraging friends. He felt that he wasn't alone. Okay, I'll try, declared the squirrel, his voice now a bit stronger. One step at a time, right? That's right, exclaimed Lucio, excited. You're stronger than you think, let's go. With that, the squirrel approached the edge of the bridge. His little feet trembled, but he remembered Granny Turtle's words. With effort, he took his first step, hesitant but determined. Lucio and Granny Turtle watched him closely, ready to help if necessary. One step. Very good. Now, another one, encouraged Lucio, tapping his feet animatedly on the ground. The squirrel, his heart racing, managed to take another step. When he reached the middle of the bridge, he paused again, but now the fear seemed smaller. He looked at his friends, and with a shy smile said, I'm going, and with that he continued step by step. Each movement became more confident until finally he reached the other side of the bridge. As he stepped onto solid ground, a wave of relief and pride washed over him. I did it! I did it! Exclaimed the squirrel, jumping for joy. Lucio and Granny Turtle embraced him warmly, celebrating the squirrel's bravery. You were amazing, said Lucio, his eyes shining with pride. See how important it is to face fear? Granny Turtle, with a wide smile, added, and remember, whenever you feel afraid, you can count on your friends. Together, we are stronger. The squirrel, now filled with confidence, smiled at his new friends and, for the first time, felt that, with their help, he could face any challenge life threw his way. As Lucio and Granny Turtle approached the opposite bank of the river, both their hearts pulsed with a mix of relief and anticipation. The crossing had been fraught with challenges, but each obstacle overcome had brought them closer together. The Andalusian forest, with its vibrant colors and melodious sounds, seemed to celebrate the courage and determination of the duo. We're almost there, Abuela, exclaimed Lucio, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. He glanced at the turtle beside him, who was walking slowly but with great resolve. Just a little more, and we'll have made it. Granny Turtle took a deep breath, her large wise eyes reflecting the sunlight as it began to set. Yes, dear Lucio, but what awaits us on the other side? She hesitated for a moment, a trace of worry appearing on her face. I hope there aren't more difficulties. Lucio smiled, trying to convey confidence. I believe that if we face whatever comes together, there's nothing we can't overcome. He stopped to take in the surrounding trees, swaying gently in the breeze. And besides, we have all our friends with us now. The rabbit and the squirrel are with us too. Granny Turtle nodded, recalling the bond that had blossomed during their journey. That's true. Friendship brings strength, and we've learned that the best way possible. She remembered the stories she had told, and how they had inspired not only herself but also others to face their fears. As they neared the bank, however, a new challenge presented itself. A large imposing rock blocked their path, like a stubborn guardian refusing to let them pass. Lucio stopped abruptly, his eyes wide. Oh no, what are we going to do now? That rock is huge! Granny Turtle stared at the boulder, a mix of concern and frustration on her face. It seems our journey isn't over yet, Lucio. We need to find a way around it. Lucio frowned, deep in thought. Maybe we can push it together. But I'm not sure we have enough strength. He looked at the turtle, who was nodding slowly, as if deep in reflection. We may not have individual strength, but we can use our skills together, suggested Granny Turtle, her calm voice conveying wisdom. Remember what we've learned, dear Lucio. Unity is strength. If we all collaborate, we might just be able to move that rock. You're right, Abuela. Let's call the others. Lucio, filled with renewed energy, turned and shouted, Hey, rabbit, squirrel, come over here, we need you. The rabbit, who had been recovering from their earlier adventure, quickly approached, followed closely by the squirrel, who, although still looking nervous, was determined to help. "What's going on?" asked the rabbit, worry etched on his face. "We have to move this rock to cross," Lucio explained, gesturing towards the colossal boulder. "If we work together, we can do it." The squirrel hesitated, eyeing the rock. "But it's so big, and I'm so small." His voice trembled as he voiced his insecurities. Granny Turtle, with her wisdom, interjected, "Remember, little friend, it's not about being strong or big. Each of us has something to offer. Together, we will be stronger than the sum of our parts." With a new spark of hope in his eyes, the squirrel nodded, and the rabbit, motivated, stepped forward. "All right, let's do this. Let's position ourselves and push with all our might," Lucio instructed the group. "1, 2, 3, let's push." With a collective effort, they surrounded the rock, each using their unique skills and strength. Lucio, with his cleverness, guided the group while Granny Turtle used her weight for stability. The rabbit and the squirrel gave it their all, everyone uniting their strength. The rock began to move slowly, creaking and protesting against their effort. "We're almost there," shouted Lucio, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "One more push." Finally, with a grand effort and a collective shout of determination, the stone shifted, revealing the path to the opposite bank. Exhausted but radiating happiness, they exchanged glances and a feeling of triumph enveloped them. "We did it!" exclaimed Granny Turtle, her heart swelling with pride. "Yes, we did it!" Lucio echoed, a smile lighting up his face. He looked at the newfound freedom before them and felt that no matter what else came their way, they were ready to face any challenge together. The group of friends approached the opposite bank of the river, tired but filled with hope. However, as soon as they spotted the next challenge ahead, their spirits began to wane. A massive stone blocked their way, like an impenetrable obstacle that seemed to mock their achievements. Lucio, with his sharp gaze, studied the situation, while Granny Turtle slowly approached, her small, heavy body trembling slightly. "It looks like our adventure isn't over yet," Lucio remarked, wagging his tail with determination. "We need to move this rock." The other animals, still catching their breath, gathered around the stone. The rabbit, who had joined them after they successfully rescued him, looked at the rock with despair. "I don't know if we can do it. It's too big," he said, his ears drooping. "I'm not sure I'm strong enough either," the squirrel added, his eyes wide as he glanced from side to side, as if expecting the rock to move on its own. Lucio frowned, deep in thought. "If we all try together, maybe we can do it. Come on, let's use our willpower, friends. Count to 3 and push." But as they positioned themselves around the stone, they realized that despite their combined effort, they couldn't move it an inch. Frustration began to build among them, and the hope that had surrounded them started to fade. "We need a different approach," said Granny Turtle, observing the situation with her wise gaze. "Brute strength isn't always the solution. Sometimes we need to be strategic." Lucio turned to the turtle, curious. "What do you mean, Abuela? What can we do if we can't move the stone?" With a calm smile, Granny Turtle began to speak. "Each of us has unique skills and talents. We can use that to our advantage. Why don't we divide the tasks? One of us can try to find a way around the stone, while another can look for something that might help us." The rabbit's eyes widened. "That makes sense. I can try to explore a bit further and see if there's a way to go around the stone." "Great idea," Lucio exclaimed, excited. "And I can use my cleverness to look for something we can use as a lever." He looked at the squirrel, who still seemed hesitant. "And you, my friend, you can be our lookout. Check from where you are and see if there's a place where the stone can be pushed or where we can find more help." The squirrel, now a bit more confident, nodded. "Okay, I'll do that." With that, he climbed onto a branch to get a better view of what was happening around them. "And I," continued Granny Turtle, "can stay here and coordinate the operation. That way, each of us can do what we do best." With the responsibilities redistributed, the group began to work. The rabbit quickly hopped away, disappearing into the bushes, while Lucio ventured off in search of a lever. Granny Turtle watched, her wisdom and patience radiating confidence. After a few minutes of searching, Lucio returned with a long, sturdy branch. Look at this. If we can place it under the stone, maybe we can move it, he said, positioning the branch. That's a great idea, Lucio, said Granny Turtle encouragingly. Now when we count to 3, we need to push together, using the branch as a lever. Let's unite our efforts. Everyone positioned themselves, taking a deep breath. The squirrel climbed down from the branch and joined them, his face determined. I'm ready, he said, and the others nodded. 1, 2, 3, shouted Granny Turtle, and with a collective effort, they pushed the stone. The strength of the branch caused the stone to move slowly. The heart of each one raced, adrenaline coursing through their veins. With one last combined effort, the stone finally shifted, opening the path to the other side. We did it, Lucio exclaimed, panting but elated. By working together, we overcame the obstacle. Granny Turtle smiled, looking at her friends with pride. Remember, my dear ones, that true strength lies in unity and collaboration. Each of us has a role to play, and together we are stronger. Joy filled the group as they hugged in celebration. They realized that the journey was not just about reaching a destination, but about what they learned and how they came together along the way. As Lucio and Granny Turtle finally stepped onto the opposite bank of the river, a feeling of relief and accomplishment washed over them. The crossing, which once seemed an insurmountable challenge, had now become an experience of learning and friendship. They paused for a moment, looking back, admiring the journey they had taken together. The sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, a spectacle that seemed to celebrate their achievement. I can't believe we did it, Lucio exclaimed, his tail wagging with joy. Together, we overcame so many obstacles. Granny Turtle, with her wise gaze, smiled. Yes, Lucio, each challenge made us stronger. We learned not only to cross the river, but also to trust one another. At that moment, a group of forest animals, who had been on alert during their absence, appeared on the trail, rushing toward Lucio and Abuela. They were rabbits, squirrels, and even some birds, who upon seeing their friends let out cries of relief. Lucio, Granny Turtle, you're back, shouted a white-furred rabbit, its heart racing with emotion. We were so worried. Yes, and not just worried, but eager to hear all about your adventure, added a squirrel, wagging its tail. You were so brave. Lucio, a bit embarrassed, looked at Granny and smiled. It was an amazing journey. We faced many challenges, but we learned a lot about friendship and courage. Granny Turtle, always the wisest, interjected, We not only crossed the river, but we also helped other animals along the way. Each one of us has something to teach and learn. The animals gathered around them, listening intently as Lucio shared stories of their adventures. He talked about the rabbit stuck in the thicket and how they helped, and how the squirrel's courage inspired them to unite even more. I never thought I could cross that bridge, confessed the squirrel, recalling the fear he had felt. But hearing Granny made me realize I had to try. Exactly, Lucio exclaimed, excited. And it was when we all worked together that we were able to overcome the obstacles. Friendship is the true strength. The forest animals began to applaud, and the atmosphere filled with enthusiasm. You're true heroes, said a bird, flying in circles above them. Your courage inspired us all. The white-furred rabbit who had been rescued looked at Lucio and Granny with admiration. If it weren't for you, I would still be trapped. I'm so grateful. Lucio smiled, his heart warmed by his friend's words. We thank you for being here. The journey was meaningful because we shared it with others. Together, we are stronger. Granny Turtle, with a sparkle in her eyes, added, And remember, each of you has your own story of courage. Never underestimate the power you have when you unite. The animals began to chatter animatedly, and Lucio noticed that the energy of the forest had shifted. There was a new spirit of unity and friendship among them. The lessons learned were not just theirs, but belonged to the whole community that was now coming together around their shared experience. Let's celebrate this friendship, suggested Lucio, raising a paw in a gesture of celebration. Today, we don't just celebrate our crossing, but also the strength we have when we are together. Yes, let's throw a party, shouted the squirrel, bouncing with excitement. Let's gather and share stories, laughter, and maybe even some food. And so the forest began to fill with life as the animals prepared for the celebration. Lucio and Granny exchanged smiles, knowing they had forged bonds not only between themselves, but also among all the forest's inhabitants. Deep down they understood that the true adventure was just beginning. As Lucio, Granny Turtle, and their new friends reached the opposite bank of the river, a wave of relief and joy enveloped them. The group gathered around a sunlit clearing, laughter echoing through the forest as they celebrated their successful crossing. The birds sang a cheerful melody, and sunbeams filtered through the leaves of the trees, creating a magical atmosphere. However, what no one could imagine was that a new surprise awaited them. While Lucio and Granny Turtle were busy sharing their stories and planning what to do next, an intense glow began to dance among the trees. The light sparkled like stars on a clear night, capturing the attention of all the animals. Curious, they turned towards the brightness. "What could that be?" asked the rabbit, his eyes wide with astonishment. "Let's find out," exclaimed Lucio, his curiosity piqued as he cautiously approached the source of the light. Granny Turtle, though a bit hesitant, followed him with slow but steady steps, feeling the thrill of discovery. "Be careful, Lucio. Sometimes what shines can have a dangerous side," she warned. But Lucio was determined. "I think it's treasure. Let's see." And as they walked closer to the light, the other animals followed, excited at the possibility of a new adventure. When they got nearer, the animals found an ancient wooden chest, covered in moss and wildflowers, that seemed almost part of the forest itself. The light emanated from it, casting a golden glow that illuminated the curious faces of their friends. "Look, a chest!" shouted the squirrel, jumping with excitement. "What do you think is inside?" With a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, Lucio approached the chest, and with a gentle nudge managed to open the creaking lid. As the lid opened, a cloud of golden dust rose up, and everyone leaned in to see what was inside. The chest was filled with scrolls, old photographs, and small objects that told stories of animals that lived in that forest long ago. "Wow, look at this," said Lucio, carefully picking up one of the scrolls. "These are accounts of adventures and experiences from other animals. It's a treasure trove of stories." Granny Turtle stepped closer, her eyes shining with emotion. "These stories are the true riches of the forest. They teach us about courage, friendship, and overcoming challenges." She picked up one of the objects, a small shell bell, and smiled. This bell must have belonged to an old friend of the forest. Its sound must have brought joy to many hearts. The animals began to examine the contents of the chest, each finding something that resonated with their own experiences. The rabbit held a photo of a group of animals gathered in celebration, while the squirrel was enchanted by a small book about teamwork adventures. "Look, this says how we are stronger together," he exclaimed. "This journey has given us more than we expected," said Lucio, looking around at the smiling faces of his friends. "We didn't find gold or jewels, but something much more valuable, the strength of friendship and the importance of helping one another." Granny Turtle, moved, added, "And each of us has a story to tell. Together, we are a great book filled with pages of love and bravery." The animals gathered in a large circle, each sharing their own stories and experiences as the light from the chest shone in the background like a symbol of the unity they had formed. And so, amidst laughter and hugs, they celebrated not only the journey they had taken, but also the true treasure they had found, the strength of friendship, generosity, and the courage that each one brought to the group. Good night, my dear ones. Rest well, and remember that tomorrow we'll have more stories to share.